Time for you to be baptized into this life. Just like Kanan did for me and Ghost.
Who?
It's a story for a different time.
You need to watch your back.
Tommy gonna blow all this up.
He's my partner, bro.
He also the reason motherfucker getting shot.
I'm like the Santa Claus of powder.
Episode titles and descriptions. That's the hot topic of discussion in today's breakdown, because thanks to No Label, who works for the Heat magazine, he has given us the first 4 episode titles and descriptions for season 3 of Force. I will be linking his article and video down below in the description section, but we are going to be breaking down all 4 of them, what they could mean, any hidden clues and messages, because you guys know from my Raising Kanan breakdowns and Power Book 2 Ghost breakdowns over the past couple of years, I always look forward to the episode titles because sometimes they do have hidden messages. Not all the time, but sometimes they do. And 1 or 2 of these episode titles do give us a few hints of what we can expect. Interestingly, they haven't given us episode 5's title and description just yet, which I'm actually not surprised with. I do think episode 5 is going to be an absolute huge episode. A mega huge episode that changes the landscape of the chessboard. I also think we're in for a mid-season break after episode 5, but I will get back around to that later on in the last chapter of this breakdown. First, let's run through these episode titles and descriptions for episodes 301 to 304 for the final season of Power Book 4 Force Season 3. Now, episode 1 title is Do or Die, and the description reads, with some of his biggest obstacles off the map, Tommy faces new opportunities and challenges in his quest to take over Chicago's drug game. So pretty standard, basic, not giving too much away. We know Tommy was able to get rid of the Serbs and Claudia right at the end of season 2, which did allow him to take over their territory. Although on Claudia Flynn, there is still a huge question mark. I do think that does need to be cleared up in this episode. If in episode 1 it isn't made clear that Claudia Flynn is dead, then I'm personally going to be leaning towards the fact she is going to be returning to cause absolute major chaos. I do also have a theory for if she is alive. I have got that on the back burner and I will release that in due course. But it also mentions that Tommy is going to be facing some new opportunities and challenges in his quest to take over Chicago's drug game, which has always been the case. Nothing is new in that respect. The last part along with the episode title, it just screams high stakes. It's all about survival. It's all about winning and becoming the king. That's always been Tommy's end goal, whether you take it back to Power when they were working under Felipe Lobos, or when he first came to Chicago and came face to face with Walter Flynn. Closer to the end of next week, I'm sure they'll also be dropping the images for episode 1, so we'll be able to kind of dive deeper into what else we can kind of expect. But generally, I do think things pick up from where they left off at the end of season 2. We've already seen the teaser where Tommy drives straight over to Miguel's looking for Maria. We're going to see a standoff between Miguel and Tommy early doors in episode 1, so throughout the episode, I wouldn't be surprised if Tommy is quite emotional. We know how he behaves when he's in love. Don't get in between Tommy Egan and his love, in this case, Maria. So, kicking things off in episode 1 will most likely be this scene here. But he is still going to have to deal with everything else at the same time. That's the fallout with the situation with Vic Flynn. Law enforcement will still be on his case. Kay Egan was also in hospital at the end of season 2, and his relationship with JP and Kate didn't exactly end well towards the end of last season. D-Mac also came back and killed King Kilo's nephew, and we are going to come to that in just a moment, because I do think episode 4's title and description does allude to the King Kilo situation. There's also Diamond, Janard and Shanti. We already know he is going to be one to watch his back when it comes to the brothers, so there definitely is going to be a lot happening. Not everything will happen in episode 1, but all of these moving pieces around law enforcement, Vic Flynn, the CBI, Shanti, Miguel and Maria, as well as Tommy's family, everything will be put into motion in the lead up to the huge episode 5. Now, episode 2's title is A Seat at the Table, and the description for episode 2 reads the following. Tommy's ambition sets him on a dangerous path, testing his alliances and endangering those that are closest to him. Now, when it gets beyond episode 2, it does become a little tricky to kind of figure out where we are because we haven't seen episode 1. Without watching episode 1, it is difficult to paint the picture of what episode 2, 3 and 4 will look like, but we can kind of piece a few things together based on what we know, what we've seen and heard in the trailers and teasers, and generally us knowing Tommy Egan as a character. I mean, we as the audience, we've known him for over 10 years. So episode 2's description talks about Tommy's ambitions setting him on a very dangerous path, and that's something he's never been afraid of. Again, you go back to Power, he's always had ambitions of growing and building on what they had. Taking this territory or that Primera, that will never change when it comes to Tommy Egan. What also won't change is the fact we know threats will be lurking around the corner, whether it's from his enemies or those alliances that he's made with Diamond and the CBI. I do think Gary Lennon and Joseph Sikora haven't held back when they mentioned those alliances will definitely be tested. We've also heard from a number of conversations across various teasers and trailers that Tommy will have to watch his back when it comes to certain alliances, and in fact, he is going to end up becoming a lone wolf. So I do think from episode 2 we're probably going to start to see the cracks appear if they weren't obvious already from the end of season 2. Now in terms of those closest to him in being in danger, that's always been the case that Tommy's in. I think this will probably be the episode where we kind of flick back to that hallucination scene with Holly Weaver, because she did mention in that scene, you can't have both. We're probably going to be referring back to it a lot across season 3 because I do think it's a huge foreshadow for what's to come in Tommy Egan's future. But based on this description, I do think episode 2 will probably fit the bill where we revisit the Holly Weaver hallucination, in terms of what she said and what she warned. Ghost lived a double life in the sense he wanted out of the game. He was living this fantasy with Angela, and even though it is slightly different with Tommy and Maria, because Maria's grown up in the world, she knows what she's getting herself into, the same dangers and consequences still exist. The same goes for JP, K and DMAC. DMAC's already been shot once, and I do think we've all got our predictions in regards to what happens to JP. So, episode 2 is where alliances will definitely be tested and where those closest to him will most likely be in danger. Now episode 303, there's always a price to pay, and the description reads, as Tommy does damage control with allies, Diamond and Janard devise a plan to deal with DMAC, along with Vic plotting his next move. Now this is where it gets really interesting. It does sound as if Tommy's having to clean up some mess either within his organization or someone that he's in business with. It may even be cleaning up more of DMAC's mess, because at this moment in time, at the end of Force Season 2, he didn't even know that DMAC was back in town. When I was rewatching Season 2 of Force, there was also a lot of similarities between DMAC and Tariq, the gun in the backpack. His conversations with Tommy were very reminiscent of Tariq mentioning to Kanan that he was ready to become his own man. But what happened with Tariq back in power? He made a lot of mistakes that Tommy, Ghost and Tasha had to clean up. That probably is going to be an ongoing theme and why Tommy will decide to bring in DMAC into the game with him, mentor him and nurture him. However, on the flip side, on the other side we're going to have Diamond and Janard devising a plan to deal with DMAC themselves. Now one thing we know he has done for sure is kill King Kilo's nephew. Towards the end of season 2, Janard went over to King Kilo to smooth things over, and he did say that he'll personally deliver over DMAC. That's something that Diamond also wasn't against. So this is where we're probably going to start to see the CBI brothers plotting behind Tommy's back if it hasn't already started in episode 1 or 2. There have been some very minor small teasers that have also dropped on social media over the past couple of days with some new footage, and you can see Janard talking behind Tommy's back.
This motherfucker won't die.
What is up, party people?
So by episode 303, this is when we're going to see them making moves behind Tommy's back because of the DMAC, Mad Dog and King Kilo situation. Now let's take a look at this from both perspectives. Both Diamond and Janard won't want to break this coalition that they formed with the RDs. They'd been in a war with the RDs for many years, and they've just managed to create a coalition that puts them all under one roof. But DMAC killing King Kilo's nephew does threaten that coalition. So, in their eyes, are they willing to give up their new organizational structure for someone who's technically considered as an outsider in Tommy Egan? In my opinion, for them, there's only one play to make things right: give DMAC to King Kilo. Now, from Tommy's perspective, what do you guys think? I mean, it's pretty simple because, like I mentioned before, we know who this character is. We've been watching him for over 10 years. There is no way he lets that happen. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the moment where the CBI is torn or where Tommy and Diamond starts to realize this ain't gonna work. Maybe to protect DMAC, the deal might actually be Tommy leaving the CBI. Maybe that actually might be one of the conditions. Now just before we move on to episode 4, they've also got Vic plotting his next move as well. So we can't forget about the importance of Vic going forward as well.
Tommy, I've done everything you asked.
Not everything.
Now he is still going to be working for Stacey Marks. The pressure will still be on him, but his cover's been blown. So on the other side, he's still got Tommy pressuring him to do his bidding for him as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if he comes up with a very clever strategy to get Stacey Marks off his back, as well as being able to help Tommy at the same time. Because at the end of the day, since Tommy came to Chicago, he hasn't really done anything behind Vic's back. He has been straight as a book. Vic wanted Stacey Marks to bring down Claudia, but instead she kept pushing and putting pressure on him to get Tommy because she's obsessed with him like characters like Cooper Sacks, Blanca Rodriguez, and all those previous law enforcement officers back in Power. So let's see what Vic begins to put in motion. I do think this is one which will definitely surprise us. I have been saying for a long time, even before any teasers and quotes were released, that Vic will definitely be a wildcard. And lo and behold, Gary Lennon did in his interview tease just that. But moving on to episode 4. Now the title for episode 304 is Time to See the King, and the description reads, Tommy finds a way to protect DMAC, and Jannard mends fences to please Shanti. So, it's time to see the king, but who does that refer to? In my opinion, based on the synopsis for episode 4, based on what we've seen in season 2 and what's happened before, it has to be King Kilo. There was a question mark around whether Glenn Davis was able to film before he went inside. I'm not 100% sure myself, but I do get the feeling that he did film what he needed to film, or whatever he was able to film. That's not based on any information I know particularly, it's just based on this episode title and synopsis. Time to see the king. In my opinion, time to see King Kilo's release from prison and where Tommy finds that way to protect DMAC. Maybe he comes to an agreement with King Kilo, or maybe that's the moment where he steps back from the CBI as a consequence of DMAC's actions. However it happens, Tommy will definitely find a way to protect DMAC. He'll definitely get a clip around the ear also, that's for sure. I don't think it's got to that point where he'll hang DMAC off a roof like he did with Tariq just yet, but Tommy will definitely be giving DMAC a good stern talking to as well. That you can be definitely sure of. So in episode 4 we're going to have Tommy finding a way to protect DMAC, and I do think it will coincide with King Kilo's release. Now the other part of the description also reads, Jannard mends fences to please Shanti, and this is also another interesting hint. It does seem like at some point during, at least in episodes 1 to 3, Jannard and Shanti are going to have a falling out. Which makes sense when you kind of think about the scenes that we've seen with Shanti warning Tommy to watch his back. There's also another scene with Shanti telling Tommy that these brothers are going to be looking out for themselves. So it probably coincides with the early fallout between her and Jannard. But in episode 4, it does seem like Jannard is going to be trying to mend things with Shanti. But this is where we have to remember, we are watching Power. These characters are going to be making moves behind each other's backs, and we have been warned by Gary Lennon that Shanti will have counter moves. At the end of the day, she is a boxer. She is going to be strategic, she is going to be patient, and she will definitely have a game plan. So the description might mention Jannard is looking to mend fences with Shanti, but what I'm saying is, let's watch out for the moves that they start to make behind each other's backs. Are they genuine in mending fences, or is that part of a bigger game and a bigger betrayal a bit later on? Again, we're going to be approaching episode 5 where I do think the tables will turn. Things will definitely start shifting, so keep an eye on that situation with Shanti and Jannard. Now on episode 5, we don't have the title and synopsis just yet, but Gary Lennon has said the following. Episode 5 is really delicious, brutal and fantastic, and it also is going to be delivering on every single cylinder. The penultimate episode is also a heartbreaker. So based on what Gary Lennon's mentioned, based on what we know from episodes 1 to 4, and based on the teasers and trailers we've seen so far, I do think we can assume that episode 5 is going to be a huge game-changing episode. I do think this is the episode where we most likely see JP's death. I do think this is the episode where we most likely see alliances completely shift upside down and take a huge turn. And I do think if Claudia Flynn is alive, they're probably going to leave us with a cliffhanger in this episode, because after episode 5, I do think they are going to be going on a break. We're going to be approaching the Christmas and holiday season, and I do think if episode 5 is delicious, brutal, and delivers on every single cylinder, then it's probably going to be the moment where they take a short break and pick things back up in Jan 2026. But there isn't much more in episode 5 beyond what Gary Lennon's teased and also what we've seen in the trailers and teasers. I'm personally expecting a huge death, which I am expecting to be JP, and if Claudia Flynn is alive, then I think that's probably going to be the big reveal / cliffhanger going into the mid-season break as well. But the floor is now yours. Drop all your thoughts on the first 4 episode titles and descriptions, as well as your kind of predictions for the brutal, fantastic episode 5, which is going to be delivering on every single cylinder. Drop all your thoughts and predictions down below in the comment section, and as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.